Today we are going to discuss Python functions, how they work and what they are. So if you go over to the Python documentation and you search for built-in functions, you will see Python has quite a list of built-in functions that come with the Python language. If you scroll down, you can see an explanation of each and how to use them and what they do. Now let's move on to making our own. Okay, so a Python function is a named piece of code that does a specific task. To start a function, you use the def keyword, and I'm just going to make a simple message, call it my message, and you call the function by just typing the name. And that's it. Okay, that is a very simple function. Okay, functions can also take parameters. So I'm going to make another function, my message, call it my message2, and we're going to pass it an argument because this is an argument and this is a parameter. Okay, so the variable between the brackets is known as a parameter. Okay, so we're going to just use the same print statement here, but we're going to now actually make it print whatever the name is that you pass in there. And I'll make this a formatted string, like so. Right. So it's going to call my message2. It's going to pass the argument Brendan as a string in there, and then it's going to be displayed in the print statement. So let's print that. So you see the first hello there, and now hello Brendan. So functions can take any number of parameters. All you have to do is separate them with a comma. So functions can also return a value. So let's make a function that calculates the area of a rectangle. Calculate area rectangle. And it's going to take two parameters, height. Okay, so there's another simple function. It does the calculation and it returns the value. So now you can call that. And if you pass in the values 7, 8, you will see that nothing actually happens. It's doing that because it's returning the value, but the value is not displayed. Okay, so you can either assign it, so you can assign the value that comes back to something, like the area, and then you can print it out like that, and there you go. It prints the calculation, the return value. Or you could just have printed like that. I could have just called it inside a print statement. It would have called it, calculated, and returned the value, and then print would have just printed it out like that. Okay, so now I'm going to make another function. Okay, right, so now I'm going to discuss positional and keyword arguments. So there we have a function called display info, and it's got two positional arguments. It's got two parameters, right? Name and age. Okay, so if I call that function and I say display info and I pass it, now I've passed them in a positionally correct order that the function is expecting them in. Okay, so there you are. So now the print statement makes sense. But if I turned it around, copy that, and I put 34 first, and then Brendan, it would not make sense. Because now they are being positionally passed, and 34 is going into name, and Brendan is going into age. Okay. So to fix that, I can pass them with keyword arguments. So I can say age equals and name equals. So now it will display it correctly, no matter what the position is, as long as I use the correct keywords and give them a value and assign it correctly, it'll print it out correctly. Okay, so that's keyword arguments or better known as quarks. I'm going to declare another function here. Let's call it some func. And let's see, we're going to pass in just arguments A, B, C. It's going to print them out in a nicely formatted string. Okay, so there is my function. I just forgot the semicolon here. Always got to end with a semicolon. Okay, and then I'm going to call it some func, and I'm going to pass it in values 2, 3. And there we go. Okay, A is 1, 2, B is 2, C is 3. Okay, as you would expect. But now you can do something else with functions. You can actually set default values on your parameters. So now you don't actually have to pass anything in, and the function will run because it will take the default values. Okay, so that will work like that. Okay, as you can see. Now, if you want to change a specific value, you just use the keyword argument. Let's change B to 6. Right, so B now will become 6. You can still override these default values. If you type other values in there, it will override those values, and it will use these values which are passed in. Okay. If you have a function where you have to pass in a value, then you can't have a default value. So then in here, for instance, you can't now pass in an empty function because it's going to complain to you and say you are missing the positional argument for A. Okay. So you have to at least pass in A. So let's make that, I don't know, 88 example. Then it'll use 88, and all the other ones will use the default value. Okay, so you must just be careful when you're doing this and you use a mixture of non-default values and ones that don't have a value, that you have to pass those values in, otherwise you'll get errors. And those have to be first. So you can't say, let's say that make this 1 again and make that, that's going to give you an error. Okay, so now if you go 66, it's going to say, okay, it's not going to know where that goes. It's going to say non-default argument follows default argument. So you can't have a non-default argument after a default argument. Your non-default arguments have to be first. Okay, so in this case, I'll set it back to 2. So you got to put your non-default arguments first in the parameter list, and then your default arguments can follow. Okay, so just remember that if you start to get weird errors that you don't understand, just go look at your argument list and know that non-default values must come first. Okay, it's time for a challenge now. So your challenge is to make a function that's going to display the times table based on a number that is passed to it, and you're going to use our previous tutorials using the while loop so that it can go around in a loop until the user quits with the queue. Okay, go do that now. Okay, so we're back. Let's do the solution. I'm going to show you the solution, or my solution. Yours might be slightly different. So set up a while loop here, an infinite while loop. Okay, I'm going to ask the user for a number using input. Okay, so there I've set up the while loop. It's an infinite loop until the user enters a small queue or a big queue, then it'll break out the loop. Okay, so it checks for that, and then it comes here and it does the else statement, and it calls a function which is underlined in red at the moment because I haven't defined it yet. Okay, so I'm going to do that now. Right, so there's my function. It's going to take a number. It's going to set up the loop, and then it's going to print it out doing the calculation and display it. Right, so that should work fine. Right, so there is the solution, guys. Let's test this. 4 times table, it displays it. 99 table, there it is, and Q to quit. Now, one thing you need to be aware of, if you did not convert this, okay, what do you think will happen? This returns a string, which is number, okay, as you can see, it checks it there. So you're passing a string into here. So this is a string. So what will it do here? It will take the string and it's going to times it by the counter. So what do you think happens to a string when it gets multiplied? It displays it multiple times. So let's see what that looks like. So if you get this, then you know, oops, I haven't converted the string. Okay? So you just got to do the type conversion here, and then it will display it correctly. So just stop that. Okay. And now it displays it correctly. Quit. Okay. Right, guys, that's the solution. I hope you got something similar. If you didn't, keep trying. Right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe to the channel to support the content. Have a great day. Cheers.